Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. The name of Emmett Till is synonymous with a racial injustice of a particularly heinous nature. But for the white supremacists, they see that as a feather in their cap. Emmett Till was a black child who was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by a pack of white supremacist animals. And it happened because there was a white woman by the name of Carolyn Bryant Donham who accused Emmett Till of whistling at her. But of course, she wasn't alone in this conspiracy to commit murder, because you also had the white media, you also had the local citizenry, and you had the government, who were also complicit in the kidnapping, the torture, and the murder of a child. And all three of those elements have been working hand in hand hyper-aggressively for the last 65 plus years to make sure that justice isn't done, because this is a point of pride for them. And this conspiracy of silence goes all the way to the top. Since the murder of Emmett Till, every single presidential administration, be they Republican or Democrat, have refused to bring the murderers to justice. And in recent years, an even more reprehensible pattern has emerged, with Republican presidents in particular, like W and Trump, having taken to the perverse tactic of using Emmett Till's murder as a means of trying to get themselves some quickie headlines by pretending that they were reopening the case. But it was just last year, when the newly inaugurated President Biden declared that they were closing the case again. And this was after the first 12 months of his administration. And if this tactic, by the way, of pretending to investigate the murder of a black person just to predictably declare, oh, well, we forgot, there's still no evidence, there's still no case here. If that sounds familiar to you, it should. It's the exact same tactic that Kamala Harris used with the murder of Matrice Richardson. She used it as a political football for her Senate campaign. When Kamala was Attorney General of California and her poll numbers were looking real shaky for her Senate campaign, she publicly declared that she was going to reopen the investigation into the sheriffs who were the last ones to see Matrice Richardson alive. Never mind the fact that it was Kamala who refused to prosecute in the first place. But as soon as she won her Senate campaign, her office quietly announced that they were dropping the Matrice Richardson investigation for the second time. Oh, there's still nothing here. We don't know why we made such a big deal out of it. So when it comes to black people, both the Democrats and the Republicans are operating out of the exact same playbook. Now, the family of Emmett Till is still fighting for justice, as they should. Because as it turns out, there was actually a kidnapping warrant that was taken out against Carolyn Donham. Though the authorities said that she had 2 young children, so they didn't want to bother her. However, there's no evidence that this kidnapping warrant was ever dismissed. And that being the case, it is still valid and it could still be used to bring this animal to justice and put her in a cage where she belongs. That's what the family of Emmett Till is fighting for now, but they're fighting for it alone. Because the Biden Department of Injustice, being led by the immoral scumbag Merrick Garland, well, they're doing exactly what they've done with every other instance where a black person's been murdered by some white supremacist. They're pretending not to know about it, or trying to find some way to wash their hands of it and say, well, that's not our job. So for all the Biden bots out there, please tell me again why it is that we should be trying to make sure that these guys remain in power. Please tell me all the good that they're supposed to be doing for us, how they're going to be fighting for black people, because it looks like all that's happening is they're just fighting against us. The family of Emmett Till should not have to be fighting this one on their own. If anything, Merrick Garland should be getting off of his wrinkled racist behind and be leading the charge. The family of Emmett Till is having to turn over every stone and do the government's job for them. The problem isn't that there's not enough evidence to go after this Donham animal. The problem is that she's white. They arrest people all the time and put them on trial for things that happened decades ago, where there's no witnesses, and at best all they have to justify an accusation of a crime is that the person worked at such and such a place. Circumstantial as hell cases, but they bring people in for trial and they do it all the time. The problem here is that if you go after this geriatric racist Donham, then a lot of these white supremacist Republicans and Democrats alike would have to be investigated and indicted as well. You open a whole can of worms once you set this precedent. Joe Biden himself is a product of the mentorship and help of a Southern segregationist. So the ties between the perpetrators of anti-black violence and the politicians you see today are incestuous. The ABC piece even goes so far as to do the usual white media splaining, acting as defense counsel for a woman who hasn't even been charged. ABC's already laying the groundwork for what the white media narrative would be in the event that she actually does get charged. They'll say it's too hard to prosecute her on kidnapping charges. Why? Most of the witnesses are already dead. God rest their souls. And it's unclear what happened to the evidence that was collected. But the personal topper for me is when they say that, well, we don't know where the original warrant is at. Its location is a mystery. So they're already trying to lay the groundwork to say that even if there is a kidnapping warrant out there, which would still be valid even today, well, we don't know where the original warrant is. It's the original that you need. Now, if Emmett Till had been white, then what we would be hearing is that it's not necessary to find the original warrant. All they need to prove is that there was a warrant issued. Just find a document referring to a warrant for the kidnapping warrant against Donham, and that's pretty much all you need. Now we know exactly what this is on the part of the white media. This is ABC sending out the message to the good old boys of Mississippi. Oh no, those niggers, they found something that can be used to put this white supremacist race soldier behind bars after all these years. We can't have that. You need to destroy the evidence. We don't know where the original warrant's at. We don't know. They know exactly where the hell it's at. But what they're saying is, with a wink and a nod, any good old boys down there, you need to go ahead and destroy some more evidence. This kind of running interference is the stuff that they never do when the defendant's black. When the defendant's black, we never hear terms like prosecutorial overreach, or that the person's been overcharged, or that there's a high legal bar to get over, or this could be overturned on appeal. This is going to get overturned, or that the charges would be so difficult to prove. No, they never do that. The white media knows what their job is to explain to everyone why innocent black people should go to prison, and why racist killers who are guilty as hell shouldn't. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready. And always carry your steel. Power tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. But even so, there's things in the story that I read from ABC that I shouldn't be seeing. And it just goes to show that too many black folks are nowhere near as mindful with their words as they need to be. This ABC story quotes a woman named Deborah Watts, who is described as a distant cousin of Emmett Till's, and she runs the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation, and she said, Mississippi is not the Mississippi of 1955, but it seems to still carry some of that era of protecting the white woman. Well, that's just plain wrong. Mississippi is no different now than it ever was. That's why they're protecting this racist puke Donham. Whoever this woman is, this Deborah Watts woman, she must be a real distant relative of Emmett Till. To say that Mississippi is not the Mississippi of 1955, why the hell you think you're still having to fight for justice if things have changed? What the hell has changed? This is an oxymoron here. This is a contradiction in terms. But she wasn't alone. They also have a quote from a filmmaker named Keith Beacham, who apparently made a documentary about Emmett Till, and he's quoted as saying, if we're saying we are a country of truth and justice, we must get truth and justice no matter the age or gender of the person involved. Now, I do see that in between the words justice and no, there's an ellipses. Those are the 3 periods, which indicates that they left out part of his statement. So this is an incomplete quoting of Mr. Beacham, and I say that for the benefit of the lead paint slurping idiots who give the knee-jerk reaction of, they took him out of context! Take your Valium and take a nap. Nonetheless, Mr. Beacham needs to be reminded that the reason Emmett Till's murderer is not in prison is not because this Donham animal is old, or because she's a woman. It's not her age or her gender that's keeping her out of prison. It's not her age or her gender that's kept her out of prison for 65 plus years. The reason that she's not in a cage where she belongs, the only reason, is because she's white. Full stop. The only reason that Carolyn Donham is still on the loose is because of the color of her skin. That's what's protected her, not her age, not her gender. So we don't want to be using inappropriate terminology when talking about this. Regardless of whatever snippets might have been taken out of his quote, I shouldn't be seeing anything like age or gender mentioned in relation to this woman at all. Those are irrelevant terms. Carolyn Bryant felt that she could do what she did, and she's been allowed to get away with it for all these decades because she's white in a country where the politicians, prosecutors, judges, and media are mostly white supremacists just like she is, and who see her as a hero to them, and they're determined to protect her. They know exactly what she represents in the public consciousness and to black people, and that's the reason why they get a giddy thrill out of telling black folks what they can't do. We need to stop tiptoeing around the truth and just come up the middle and say what is obvious to everyone. That the reason all these Jim Crow era racists were never prosecuted is because you have white supremacists in both major parties who are fighting to protect them. These Democrats, they revere Carolyn Bryant every bit as much as the most big-mouth racist Republican you can think of. Both the major parties are fully dedicated to the continuation and preservation of white supremacy, and as they see it, the ability to kill black people without being punished, that is the epitome of white supremacy. They understand that is how white supremacy is going to be enforced, through anti-black violence. And in a number of cases, the decrepit old Poles like Joe Biden were best pals with these racists. And if we start seriously looking into the murderers from the 50s and 60s, then with a number of these politicians, we're going to find that during their early days in politics, they were all mobbed up with these killers. You'll find connections between the murderers and these judges and prosecutors too. In most cases, there's barely 2 degrees of separation. And then you have trash like Kristen Stewart, who stands in front of the family of Ahmaud Arbery while they're demanding justice, and she tells the judge to ignore the family, and that letting the killers spell out whatever they think their punishment should be, that would give the family peace. Gee, sounds just like those racists in Mississippi back in 1957. Well, what's the best way to have just let these good old boys go? That's the best way. Just ignore the family, let these good old boys go. That would be justice in this case. And you got the Democrats basically telling us the same thing in the 21st century. Reminds me of how you got those bootlicks in California who were telling us that we should accept symbols like an apology as a form of reparations. Reparations means to repair something. That's the root of the word. How the hell do the empty and insincere words of a white supremacist repair anything? After they pretend to say that they're sorry, what's changed? How is our lives any different or any better? They're not. We need to understand that the reason that you got so much of the white authorities who are standing behind these murderers and making sure that they're protected from any sort of prosecution under law is because they want black people to feel that we don't have a right to protect ourselves. We can just sit here and just hope not to be the next victim. And I'm telling you that ain't the case. While black people understand the murder of Emmett Till for the abomination that it was, white power, on the other hand, sees it as a demonstration of their ability to kill with impunity. They can kidnap, torture, and murder children, and then all get on code to protect the killers and work together for decades to make sure that justice is never done to them. This is a show of their solidarity. This shows them just how united they are. And all of the excuse making that they do, that they never ever try with any other group. They're still hunting down Nazis who were teenage prison guards in the concentration camps back in World War II. They're still going after those guys. This is why it's stupidity for you to allow either political party to tell you that they represent your interests. There is no interest more important than ensuring the safety of our children. So long as white supremacists, be they in police uniforms or just common racist thugs walking the streets, can murder black children, can snatch them off the streets, torture and kill them, and are given protection by the state, as long as that's the case, our children aren't safe. And it falls to us to make sure that they're safe. Tamir Rice was gunned down in a park, and the bastard who did it is still free today. And the authorities there, led by their bootlicking sellout black sheriff, who is a disgrace to the skin he wears. They're putting out a report saying that Tamir Rice was responsible for his own murder. We understand, and we have always understood, that black people are targeted in this country, and nowhere is the bullseye larger or more persistent than when it comes to black children. Well, we have a right and an obligation to protect black children from anyone seeking to harm them. We are under no obligation to do nothing while children are being murdered. I told you about the case in Long Island where you had John White, a black father, whose black son was assaulted by a gang of white supremacist thugs at a party, and these teenage thugs then called themselves going to Mr. White's home, pursuing his son like some lynch mob of old, and this is in the 21st century where they were doing this, telling the father, "You're going to send that nigger out here." And why? Because there was some white girl at a party who made some accusation. Well, Mr. White protected his family. He did not allow some white supremacist thugs to call themselves kidnapping his son and murdering his child. He protected his family. And the state, of course, completely ignored the law, ignored the man's right to self-defense, and put some trumped-up charges against him, but he didn't care. That didn't stop him. You think that he didn't know that that would occur? He was freed 3 years later by then Governor Patterson, but at no point did you see Mr. White saying, I was in the wrong. I don't know what was wrong. He gave no apologies for doing what he was supposed to do, protect his family. He knew that protecting his child was going to make him a target by the state, but he didn't care. His child was safe, and that's all that mattered. Too many black folks, however, are looking for an excuse to cower in the face of white supremacist aggression. Racist teachers in school are calling black children nigger in class. They're even assaulting black children. And black parents, too many of them, don't even bat an eyelash. Now, the white supremacist teachers and principals and school board members, they see this unwillingness to act in the face of violence against black children. They see our refusal to respond. And so do these white supremacist classmates of theirs. That's what makes it where some of these teenage racists feel so emboldened that they can beat a black child at a party and then form a lynch mob and go to the child's house in the middle of the night and tell the child's parents to send the kid out to them. The safety of black children must come first. Anything else is cowardice and an invitation to the next Carolyn Donham to make an accusation, because to these white supremacists, it's all one big joke. They beat and even murder black children because they believe that they can do so with impunity. It's up to us to prove that they can't. Carolyn Bryant, along with her other accomplices in the murder of Emmett Till, did so as part of the irregular forces of white supremacy. That's why the government is protecting them. They protected them in the 50s, and they're still protecting them all the way up to the present. The question isn't whether this racist country has changed after the murder of Emmett Till. The question is whether black people have. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Bobby Williams, Sandra Bates, Cordelia Dudas, Eddie Newsom, and Robert Hill. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.